This one key concept has made it 90 times more likely that someone buys from me, and I am going to show you that today. So, this concept is one called activation points. And it's a simple enough concept to understand, but it makes a big difference, especially in the content and the advertising funnels. And a lot of people just don't do it in an intentional way. And if they do it, it's kind of like they got lucky. So, activation points can be thought of as something of a milestone or like a key objective that if someone does it, they become so much more likely to convert and buy something from you. They're a way to push leads deeper into your funnel, and you don't have to spend hours and hours doing outreach, follow up, that kind of stuff. So, in this video, I am going to show you what activation points are, why you need them, and then how to implement them. Shouldn't take much longer than 10 to 15 minutes, but we'll see. I've been using this strategy for the last 7 years since my first big mentor showed it to me, and I have seen this do over $500 million in sales in a single funnel. So it's very interesting, and I'm going to talk about that in a few. So the problem and the reason that this is a good video idea is that some services are very hard to sell to cold traffic. So they might work in content, they might work through referrals, but once you get into mass outreach and a lot of ad spend, they become very difficult. And there's two kind of categories that this is true for. The first is a lot of consulting, a lot of coaching, those type of offers, a lot of info offers. And the second one is there's a lot of different services where even if it's done for you, technically speaking, there's a lot that has to go into it on the client's point of view. And YouTube is one of those, for example. You might do the idea, the script, the thumbnail, the uploading, the editing, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the client still has to be the one to film. So those are the two main situations where we might be using activation points. And if that describes you, you're going to want to pay extra close attention to this. The second problem is that sometimes if you grow enough, and I'm not sure that there's a specific revenue that we can attach this, you're eventually going to max out your TAM, your total addressable market, the amount of people in your target audience. This will always be a lot higher than most people think, but alas, 500K, $1 million a month in ad spend in some markets will max this out. So it's also going to be very valuable for that type of person as well. If you have something like a mass market cold email offer or a mass market content offer, or you sell some kind of accounting stuff, like your TAM is basically anyone and it doesn't really matter. But for those that just sell something that's very specific to a certain niche, this is going to be for you. So there's 3 examples and 3 different problems that I'm going to talk about here, and those are going to be real world examples that I've actually seen and been a part of. So the first one is my example. I run a variety of coaching programs, and it's very difficult to sell that kind of stuff to cold audiences. They don't know who you are. They don't give a shit. They don't even know what your philosophy is a lot of the time. Why would they care? So that's a very big problem for my type of business. The second one is one that I said before, where it's basically a YouTube business where you can do everything. It can be done for you, so to speak, but they still have to do something. And then, that's a big problem for you. And the final example I'm going to go over is the affiliate example. And that's the one where I saw it do $500 million in sales in about 18 months. And in this one, it was a webinar funnel, and their big problem was just people not taking action. So it was a business opportunity, a biz up, how to learn affiliate marketing and make a career out of it. Like that was the situation. And the problem was people were not taking action after the webinar, which was their primary tool to sell this. So if we go back here, this is the 1000x leads funnel. And this is the funnel that I created. Not that I created the concept of paid ads, content outreach, and partnerships, but I created the diagram and the philosophy that puts it all together. So at the top, we have our 4 main ways to drive traffic: our paid ads, our content, our outreach, and our partnerships. Everything that we do to get clients is going to fall into one of those buckets realistically. There's not really anything that isn't going to fall under one of those things. In the middle of our funnel, we drive our traffic to our different lead magnets and email flows and thank you pages and funnels and webinars and VSLs and newsletters and all that kind of stuff. And at the bottom of our funnel, We have a bunch of different offers to sell to people based on whether they're qualified or not. This is the thing that makes a world of difference in a good marketing funnel because 99% of people are going to be unqualified, and there's nothing that you or I or anyone else is going to do to change that. It's just the way it is. It's just like gravity. So instead of trying to fight gravity or come up with a way to get around gravity, we need to do something different. For gravity, we make a plane or a rocket ship. For this, we have different offers. So if they're very unqualified, we go to sell them some digital products, usually under $100, but not always. We might stuff our lead magnets and email flows and newsletters and that kind of stuff with affiliate links that we can build up some nice MRR for tools that they would buy anyways, whether they actually pay us or not. We might also refer them away and collect a fee. We might sell them a course. We might sell them a program or a mastermind. Or if they are qualified, which some people will be, of course, and that's our bread and butter, we will sell them our intro offer and then upsell them to our recurring service, or we might just sell them our recurring service outright. So this is a very important stuff because the activation points, if we do it intentionally, are going to be these lead magnets and email flows up here. So I say the word intentionally, which is very important because a lot of people will just willy-nilly make this stuff with no real thought or anything. We will be doing thought in this video, of course. So we will show you exactly how these activation points come into play. So if we go back to our problems, activation points solve both of these. They solve the problem that some services are hard to sell, and they also solve the problem of you maxing out your TAM because you're going to make your own with activation points, as amazing as that sounds. So activation points in the problem number one, they kind of act as stepping stones to move people closer to converting. So let's just say it's a river and the river is too wide, the current's too strong for someone to essentially take the leap. But if you put a bunch of stepping stones and they can hop slowly over the river, eventually they'll get close enough to the other side where they're comfortable. And the river is the gap between them where they are now and them buying our service, and the stepping stones are the activation point, if you want to think of it that way. The secondary thing is they also act as a way to create demand instead of just capturing it. Because think of it this way. If you are doing a YouTube agency, for example, basically your only clients are going to be the ones, who are currently doing YouTube, currently recording, currently filming, currently comfortable with doing that. But if you have these activation points and you can basically bring someone from never even thought about YouTube to step 1, step 2, step 3, and you're essentially building up and creating more people in that total addressable market. And I'm going to go over that right here, right now. So the first example that I am excited to show you is one of mine. And I know that this is true because I'm the one who has lived it. It's not theory, it's not guessing, it's just how it is. And my activation points and the ones that I figured out here, there's going to be 5 of them. So let's do the drawing and go Matt's activation points. We'll just go Matt's AP or APs here. And there's 5 of them. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 things that if these things are true, people are 90 times more likely to buy from me. And you can actually measure that quite easily just by comparing your onboarding form information, your Calendly book information, and then taking a look at your email flows. So it's actually easier to measure this than you might think. And these 5 things are, first, you got to do my work form system. So that is my system where every hour of work you fill out a form with what you did. This is a great way for accountability. The next is my project management system. The next is my CRM build. The next is my metrics. And the final one is my operations spreadsheet. We'll just put ops. If these people have these 5 things in their hand and they're using them before they ever get on a call with me, they are 90 times more likely to convert than someone who hasn't done any of these things. And you can measure that quite easily. So in my situation, instead of trying to think about, oh my God, how do I make a webinar? Oh my God, how do I do X, Y, and Z? My whole thing is how do I get these activation points into people's hands, as well as how do I get them to use them? So those are the only 2 questions that you really need to do because generally speaking, if someone has all of these things, they're going to become my client, and that's all there is to it. So instead of how do I get more clients, how do I get more people to download or access and implement my activation points? Very, very, very important stuff. For a YouTube example, like we said before, some activation points might be, and think of it this way, if someone has never created a YouTube video before, even if they want to, it is still a tremendous gulf between them actually creating it and them becoming your client for script writing, editing, ideas, that kind of stuff. So the activation points in this situation would probably be something more like how do you even get them comfortable with this kind of stuff, let alone, you know, your client. So the first thing could be like, we're going to put gear, like production value, like lights, microphone, that kind of stuff. The next thing would be like, how do you come up with ideas? The next thing would be like an exercise to speak better on camera. Maybe that's a 30-day challenge. Maybe that's who knows. Another one could be like a YouTube metrics, like what to track and what to get, you know, familiar with. And then another thing would be like a YouTube improvement sheet or something like that. We're going to just put imp. So if someone has the correct camera stuff for their budget, someone knows how to come up with ideas, someone has done maybe some practice speaking on camera to get them more, used to it. Someone knows what metrics to track for and how to measure them and how to improve them. And someone has like a realistic plan to improve on YouTube, no matter if they're an absolute beginner and just terrible at it, and they kind of believe they can improve. Those are an example of 5 activation points that will get someone closer and closer to actually becoming a client. So if we go here again and we go like, this is the river, just pretend there's a current here. And this is, let's say, YouTube, rookie, someone who's never done something before. And this is the, done for you service, for example. Like that gap is just far too big for anybody to, get through on their own. But if you start adding stepping stones, like activation point number 1, and then activation point number 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, it becomes a lot more manageable for someone to cross that river, so to speak, in this amazing metaphor. What's fun to note and funny to note is there might not be 5, there might be 1, there might be 100, and whatever there is, it's your job to find it. But a lot of the time, like, you don't really need them to get all 5. Like, maybe this person in this hypothetical example is not really comfortable jumping all the way across, but they're comfortable, like, taking the leap once they get to 40% of the way across, activation point number 2. Or once they get to, more than halfway across the river, now they can comfortable taking the leap. It's not always a situation where you have to get them to do all 5, but you want to plan for it, or you want to plan for however many there are. And now I'm going to talk about the example of the one where there was $500 million in sales. So this was basically an affiliate offer, and it was a biz op. So it was how to become a professional affiliate. This was many years ago at this point, probably 6 years ago, 6 to 7 years ago. So basically, there was a 15K course. It was a very big affiliate guru. And it was a webinar, like that was their method. So it was I believe, 90-minute webinar, maybe even 2 hours. So they would run their ad spend, they would get to the webinar, people would show, people would learn, people would get indoctrinated, they would buy, or they would schedule a call or buy, or they wouldn't, type thing. And there's a big problem of people not really taking action after the webinar. It's not like that's uncommon. That's going to be most people don't take action. But that was the constraint in this funnel, where their show rate was fine, their close rate was fine, their economics were fine, their cost per webinar sign up was fine. They just needed to fix this. So what they did is they looked at all of their data and their call calendar and their onboarding form and their type form responses, maybe type form if that was a thing back in the day, I don't know, their form responses. And they looked at it and they're like, what is the one thing, or what are the things that basically from the webinar to actually, let's just say, getting on a sales call, what is the one thing that we could do that makes them more likely to get through this river, to stay with the analogy. And they found that the number one thing that determines whether or not someone moves forward or not, more so than anyone else, is if they buy their domain name right after the webinar. So, domain name, because they are starting a business right here, right? An affiliate business. So, that is the number one thing. So, now their activation point, their offer is all about how do we get people to basically buy this domain name? How do we do that? And what they did is they said in 24 hours after the webinar, if you send us a screenshot basically of your GoDaddy or Namecheap or Google domain purchase of your domain, we will send you $25 to cover the cost of it. And that was their offer. So it basically overnight they were doing about $2 to $3 million per month in sales when, I got involved, or I was like fortunate enough to be a part of it. Not that I really did anything at this point. This was pretty early in my career. And that, just imagine like this line here is like 2 to 3 million. So let's just say 2 to 3 million on their, I think it was Braintree because I couldn't use Stripe. After they implemented this, it literally went straight up, like almost like a hockey puck to like 20 to 30 million per month. Literally just, or a hockey stick, just literally crazy. And that really is the power of finding the right activation points. When you find them, you will get an increase in sales if you do it properly of an order of magnitude, not just 10%, 20%, but like 500%, 1,000%, maybe even more. So if we want to get to the implementation of all this kind of stuff, the first thing we really got to understand is it's way easier to implement good activation points looking back and connecting the dots as opposed to just guessing. And this is why I don't really recommend, I always recommend it, but I don't talk about it for people who are not doing several $100,000 per month or more. It's just under that, you're kind of just guessing. You don't have enough data, sales experience to really understand. When you're at this point, what you really want to do is brainstorm or try to identify 10 different ones, create 5 of them, and then create 5 landing pages, email flows, deliverables, like everything you need, and make sure each one links to the next. So that's very important. So they finish one. In my case, they finish their work form. The next one is to do their project management tool. That's linked right in there. You want to have basically like an interconnecting web of activation points. So if like we have 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, 5 here, we really want it to be like connected all the way through where there's no real separation between any activation points. They're just all part of like one different system. And that's really what is going to make you a lot of money as opposed to, okay, I got the number 1. Now we have a separate campaign for number 2. You just want it to be a big, endless web of activation points where there's all cross promoting each other. They all lead into one another. That's the best way to get people to activate, because even if they don't need to activate all of them to actually become a client, let's plan for it, right? Plan for the worst, hope for the best. Then we have that in our newsletter, our email flows, in our communities. We have retargeting ads for each of them. And we're just basically trying to get people into this whole system where we have all of our different activation points. When we do this, basically what's going to happen is we're going to get a steady stream of people flowing into each. Our market is going to be growing because we are actually building it ourselves with getting all these people who weren't in our market before and now they are. And after they hit enough activation points, all automatically as part of our overall, lead generation funnel, all of our sequence, we are going to be getting nonstop calls out of nowhere. That's what I always hear when I tell people to do this and they do it. We're just randomly getting calls. Yeah. No, we're not randomly getting calls. We are doing the system to perfection. I hope this was valuable, and I'll see you in the next one.